Okay, if I'm keeping up, this should be 207, Brian Hornback Experience, not in the Old Forge Distillery Podcast Studio, but actually on the patio of what used to be Sam and Annie's Bexhill. My buddy Chris Captain had this. I would turn the camera around, but it's too much trouble. Coming soon is Griddle Gourmet, Modern Indian Bistro and Bar. But anyway, John Duncan and I live relatively close to this location. And so I did one earlier today over at New Harvest Park. And so John, another one that's got a sponsor message on the Mega Bullhorn of Truth, BrianHornback.com. So John's running for county clerk. So how you doing, John?
Pretty good. And I can't believe I finally made it on the experience.
Here we are on the experience. You know, it's funny as the website itself's been around, as you know, since 2004, which is 22 years. Started doing podcasting very slow. Now starting to do a little bit more of it. But hey, you know, podcast is kind of where it's going, I think. So here we are. But so John is, I talked about it about 2 episodes ago when I had David Ambert on. And I talked about the fact that David's son and daughter are nephew and niece to the Duncan family. So for years, and we're probably going to spend a lot of time, John's running for county clerk, we're probably going to spend some time talking about the Duncan family because John is the first son of the 4 Jimmy Lynn Duncan kids. And what's funny is in 1982, I was 16 years old, and it was the first campaign I volunteered in. It was the Robin Beard for U.S. Senate campaign because Robin Beard was running against Jim Sasser. Sasser had been in office for, I guess, 6 years. And I ended up coming into your driveway to meet your mom to get my first yard signs, bumper stickers for Robin Beard, which happened to be, kind of across the street from your grandparents in Holston Hills. So I don't necessarily credit Lynn and Jimmy for being the ones that really kind of got me in this mess. It was Lois Smith and Ron McPherson that really got me in this mess. But that was after I'd come to John's house. How old were you in 1982?
So I would have turned 2 that year.
Well, there you go. So see, so John was 2, and but anyway, so what I said to Amber was, I said, you know, there's been this big talk about the Duncan machine, and I'm still looking for it. Still looking for the Duncan machine. I told Amber, and I'm like, if there is a machine, I'm probably a cog in that machine. But what's funny about the quote Duncan machine is that you really had 2 people that were with Congressman Duncan, John's father, and that was my friend Ed Bailey and Mose Lowbetty. And so, you know, when you're in the Duncan machine, whatever that was, you kind of had to line up with either Ed or Mose. And so I always ended up with Ed. And what was funny is when I was chairman of the party at the Duncan barbecue, it was Ed and I that ended up getting in an argument with Harold Ford Jr., who was running for U.S. Senate that year. And we ended up getting interviewed by a New York Times reporter. And we also had a little spat with Lincoln Davis that night. But what was funny is, I guess it was, I don't know if it's, so I know it wasn't Joe, so I think it was Jeff, or might have been Jack. Anyway, one of the brothers was standing behind Ed going, don't let him do this, Brian. I'm like, oh no, we're going to do this. But Ed and Mose, the most infamous story is when they almost came to blows about whether Colonel Sanders was from Corbin or London, right?
Yeah, or maybe, I think it was Harlan or Corbin.
Yeah. 2 Kentucky towns.
Yeah, or no, I think you are right. But yeah, I remember them having debates like that all the time. And I guess, and which that year, I guess I would have been on the Ed Bailey side too, because I was working on the Corker campaign, and I couldn't believe that Mose brought Harold Ford Jr. to the barbecue.
Actually, I think that was the first thing. Of course, me and Mose, obviously, once Ed passed, then, you know, I mean, obviously, I would talk to Mose. I'd talk to Ed, even when they both were alive. But Ed was always convinced that any Democrat that came to the Duncan barbecue was there because Mose had invited him. And I think that's how that whole thing started, was, I remember Ed saying something to the tune of, "Why is Harold Ford Jr. here?" I bet you that blank, and it was with a D. Wasn't Brian Hornback type talk. I bet you Mose invited him.
Yeah, I'm sure that probably was the case. But my grandfather always said that a Democrat's vote was worth 2 because it's, 1 less against you and 1 more for you. So, so he was always glad to have whatever support he could get. And my dad carried that on, and so our family was always.
The Duncan barbecue was always. It was always Republicans and Democrats, and the Duncans would not have been in office all those years. And look, most of the time the Duncans were in Congress, we were the super minority party. Mm-hmm. So, while there's this great big debate about ballot access and all that stuff, and before everybody starts getting all their dander up about, Republicans supporting Democrats, y'all got to know that in order for us to win 1 or 2 races a year, in order for us to have kept Congressman Duncan and then Congressman Jimmy Duncan in Congress, that's what we had to do. We had to rely on Democrats.
Yeah, and he always got along well with the Democrats.
Right.
And like my dad's voting record was, several years he was named the most conservative member of the House, depending on which rankings you looked at. So he was as conservative and as Republican as they come, but he just tried to get along with everybody and treat everybody the same, and that's kind of what their reputation was in DC and here at the district. Everybody knew that they could go no matter whatever their issue.
Well, I remember during the George W. years when the vote happened on the Iraq War, Jimmy Duncan was one of the rare Republicans that voted against it. And history has proven Jimmy Duncan right on that one. Yeah,
there were 6 Republicans at the time in the House, and he was the last one standing. There were some who lost their seats over it at the time, and I remember having many conversations with him, in those days, and he would be up all night reading everything he could, and he and he's written about it and talked about it. But when he cast that vote, he thought that it could possibly end his career, but he was willing to do it at the time, and he felt so passionately against the war. And then slowly, what was the most unpopular vote he ever cast became one of the most popular he ever cast. And if you look back at Trump in 2016, he really ran on kind of that more humble foreign policy and staying out of foreign affairs that didn't directly threaten the U.S. And I think that's really where the party seems to have shifted as a whole, and most people now have come to agree that the Iraq War was a huge mistake.
Right. Well, and we will after we get this, I think I got 3 more podcasts of everybody who's had a sponsored message on BrianHornback.com, the Mega Bullhorn of Truth.com. But I really do need to sit down with your dad, and we do it may end up being so long that it might be 3 or 4 episodes, but that's fine. I do need to sit down with your dad and talk about it because 4 years I was on the school board. I went to DC at least 3 years of the 4. He was always he always wanted the people that represent that were from his district to go with him to the House dining room. We always ate, Bill Brown and I, from Cleveland city schools down in, because at one time, I don't think Burchett goes that far now, but back then in 2000 to 2004, y'all went all the way into Bradley County. So it was always open. I remember even as a young kid, I had my great grandmother lived right outside DC, and my uncle, my great uncle, lived in Severance Chapel, Maryland. So we would go up there sometimes, and my brother had to do a project on the Hope Diamond. While we were there, we actually went to your grandfather's office, and supposedly, according to the Sunnyview Elementary School lore, apparently coming back from that, all I talked about was politics from then on. So Mary Lou Horner says I've been running for public office since middle school, and I said, you probably got to back it up because it's probably the 4th grade. But anyway,
and I'm a Sunny View guy myself from back
Yep.
in East Knoxville, and I mentioned at the Center City Club. I said I feel like I've known you my whole life, and I've definitely been reading your blog, since it started in 2004. And
He's been reading it. Sometimes you can't admit that you read it, and that's okay.
Yes, and there was just about a 2 or 3 year period where I couldn't admit to it, but other than that, I'm a proud supporter of
and it's just been it's been an interesting thing, because I know I remember the when your father got, I guess, appointed, and then we had the election with Dudley Taylor. I remember that election night, he was horrified because Phyllis Severance and Elaine King, who's now passed away, John Kirby King's wife, started throwing milk duds out into the crowd because Dudley Taylor that night. And then I remember Stephen Smith, which I saw his name the other day. He ran against Congressman one time, and I wore out local talk radio during that race. And then 2014 was another good Duncan win. So, we've had some fun times. I've learned everything I've learned from folks like Jimmy Duncan and Lloyd Smith and Ron McPherson. All the good things that I learned, all the good things I've done, I learned from them. Anything else, I just took upon myself. But so I hear you've got your dad out putting up yard signs.
Yeah, just dropped him
off. Things are different, and we were just talking about this, and we'll talk about it a little bit right now. So tell everybody about what your dad thought when y'all were putting up the 4x4s.
Yeah, so I came this afternoon. Me and Dad were out in South Knoxville and around East Knox County putting up signs, and all these years he was up in Washington mostly, or when he's in town, being at anywhere he could. And so we were the ones who were putting up the signs, and we got out. The first one we were at, I pulled the stakes out and I pulled out the post hole driver, and he said, I've never seen one of those before. And I thought, here, he's been around politics for 70 years, and I always learn something new.
I had to remind John that my first race was at 23 in 1990, and I went and got some wooden pallets, and we took the wooden pallets apart. And I took them to a gentleman who's now passed named Paul Beal, and we got his table saw out, and we cut little ends, because back in 1990, your political signs were paper, were poster board basically, printed, and so you actually stapled them on. So yeah, it's probably been a while since Jimmy's had to go out and put up signs. Clearly in 2000, I had some type of glossy poster board over metal stands, and it wasn't until 2004 that this corrugated plastic thing come along. So I'm sure we're hurting the environment with all these signs.
Yeah, definitely. And Wayne, one thing just as an observer that I thought was interesting, because I'm still used to having to pay for the signs based on how many colors you used on the printing.
You're using 2 colors, right?
Well,
a little bit of red and blue, right?
But that's no longer, now they're all just done by a computer, and so
really
you can use as many colors as you want. And so you've seen the candidates, lately the trend locally has been to put your picture on the sign, and I think that seems to be pretty effective in letting people put a face with the campaign and feel like they know the candidate. And so
I do kind of think that if you look like Kim Frazier, or you're big like Brent Gibson, I do think probably the picture makes a difference. I don't know, but anyway, I think the Duncan sign looks very good. I think it's we just had the new owners of the restaurant. If he's still in there when we get done, I might have to figure out what the modern Indian bistro and bar is going to be. But anyway, John Cook's the owner of this place, and I know John don't care that I'm using it, so we're good. Anyway, it's just interesting to see these. But yeah, your signs look very, very familiar to signs we've seen in the past. So.
Yeah, we definitely tried to, kind of pay tribute to
the lineage and the heritage and the everything about the Duncan. So yeah, it looks very much like a Duncan for Congress sign. But you're running for county clerk, so you've been around for a while. Obviously, we all know. I mean, the county clerk's probably the one. My day job is for the trustee. We're the tax collector. I mean, people are complaining now because the personal property bills have gone out. If you have a business and you went to the county clerk's office and you registered your business, then that generated the property assessor to start assessing you your business equipment with some personal property tax. And a lot of people don't realize during COVID, a lot of people started up businesses because they didn't really have a lot to do. So they started up businesses that they wanted. And then from then we people just so now these bills have gone unpaid, so now we're starting to collect these bills. So that's kind of the thing that's happening right now. But that it starts with the county clerk, then it goes to the property assessor, and then the bill comes to the trustee, who's just the tax collector. We just send out the bill that we're told from the property assessor. So the county clerk, I know you've described it as the front door to county government. So kind of talk about what else the county clerk does besides business license, and kind of what you see in the county clerk's office, and why that's a good start. That's a good spot for you to be in.
Yeah, and what I've said, yeah, exactly. Yeah, as you said, I've called it the front door of county government, and I've said, not everybody's going to be going to the courts or dealing with the mayor's office, but just about everybody in Knox County at some point, most people once a year or so, are going to go through the clerk's office. And business licenses, obviously, but vehicle registrations are, probably the number one thing that people associate with it.
Almost everybody's got at least one car, if not multiple cars. So you got to get your license plate renewed. You got to pay your wheel tax. Then when you get married, you got to get a marriage license.
Yep, marriage licenses and business licenses. And then the clerk's office actually collects the hotel motel tax.
Yeah.
So there's actually a little bit of tax collection that goes into it, and then what a lot of people don't realize is the clerk also serves as the official clerk of record for the county commission.
Right.
And so the clerk is responsible for maintaining all the records of the county commission, and that's one thing that I've talked a little bit about that I'd like to change in the office. Is right now, if people who are reading your website are the kind of people that would be interested in really following and keeping up with what the county commission's doing, and right now the way the system is, you almost have to know exactly what you're looking for, the exact date, if you're looking back through any records to find out, the proceedings of the commission, and for people, who like to trust but verify, and not just rely on the media, and do their own homework and go and read what's gone on in commission proceedings and maybe see how their commissioner voted. That's something that could greatly be modernized, and I'd like to take these records and convert them, bring them up to date, and make a searchable database similar to what you'd see with with what Nashville has with the state legislature, or how you can research bills and legislation before Congress in Washington.
Right. Now, I've noticed that down in like Chattanooga and I think maybe Davidson County, they've started some kiosks where you can go up, and I know I watched a video, an Instagram reel or Facebook reel, where somebody went up and demonstrated the one in Hamilton County. And I think it's inside a Food City, inside a Food City store. You just walk up and you scan the postcard that the state sends you, and then you pay, and then it just zips out your registration and your sticker.
Yeah, and that's one thing that another thing we've talked about. A lot of people who deal with the clerk's office complain about the lines in the system. Where you take a number and wait your turn, and especially at the end of the month when everybody waits to renew their tax, it's going to get backed up. And so that's one way that other counties have addressed that. In Davidson County, I think it was 11 years ago, they started the kiosk system.
Oh, wow.
It's been around for a while.
Wow.
And it's really in most of the surrounding counties of Knox. I know Blount County's had it for years. Sevier has it.
Wow.
Anderson has it. So I think right now there's 33 counties in the state that
that's about
participate in the system. Yeah, and so it's that's a technology that we would definitely like to utilize.
Yeah.
But and what it is, like you said, for simple transactions that people can come and basically do it yourself. It's a way to avoid the line, but we also don't want to sacrifice the one-on-one customer service.
Right. Well,
a lot of people are going to,
and it does provide a one. It provides people, taxpayers, citizens with an opportunity to interact with their government. It gives folks an opportunity to have a job that work for the clerk's office. And the other thing that people probably aren't understanding is, in Knoxville, with all the car dealerships that are here, I know that during the time with my day job that I was at Farragut, I know several of the car dealerships down in West Knoxville, they bring everything they've sold, and then they got to be processed, so that's a little more time consuming as well. So that's a large part of what the clerk does is doing the new titles, the new tags, and the new license plates for the dealerships to then give back to their customers eventually, right? And then if you need a title, I know from my day job, there's mobile home titles, there's titles for boats. We got a lot of boats down here in southwest Knox County. And I think you even have to title the jet skis. Mm-hmm. So, all that stuff's got to be titled. And then if you lose a title, you have to come get another one. And so, it's just a constant flow of people. And then, you're even doing, several of the satellites have passports.
Yep.
And driver's license. So, there's a lot of things the clerk does that really takes somebody that kind of understands all the aspects of county business in order to then lead that office, right? And so, you spent nearly all your life in a family that's helped the public, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah, and that's what I've talked about. I think the hallmark of my family, and my family obviously emphasized public service and,
right,
and the virtues or importance of that, but their hallmark has always been constituent service, and that's part of the what we were talking about earlier, and helping Democrat or Republican,
right,
and that's why I'm running for this office specifically at the end of the day is just because I want to be there to help people and to utilize what I've been given to pay it forward and
sure,
and to help other people, and this is the opportunity to interact and help the most people and the most regular kind of citizen that there is. And I also say that the clerk's office is owned and paid for, like all the offices, mm-hmm, by the citizens of Knox County, and I want to run it efficiently and as conservatively as possible. And I believe that my background in business will help me kind of bring that business-like mindset to it when it comes to watching every penny and making decisions that would benefit the taxpayers and give them the most bang for their buck and the best service at the lowest cost. So.
And of course, we've talked about his father and his mother. His mother's since passed, but Congressman has remarried. Miss Vicky is his wife. But in addition to you just being a son and brother, you also are married to your wife Elizabeth, and you are the father of Charlie and Jimmy, twins. How old are they now?
They're 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they'll be 11 this summer. And they're finished up at Rocky Hill right now, and so it's crazy that they're going to be going into middle school.
They're in the 5th grade this year?
Yep.
Wow.
Which their summer birthdays, so they're on kind of the later end of the grade. But
wow.
Yeah, they're just growing like crazy. Jimmy's
turning into a good Ed Bailey baseball player.
Yeah, he's good at baseball. He's a point guard in basketball, and he's played quarterback in flag football. So he's a really good athlete.
And Charlie's doing what she wants to do, right? So
yep. So she's tumbling and done gymnastics, and she's a big Taylor Swift fan, like a lot of people that age.
That's awesome.
But yeah, they're both just turning out great. I can't believe.
It's hard to believe they're going to be 11 years old, because I remember when the Duncan family went from 2 to 4. So anyway, we've spent some time. I think folks know what the clerk's office does. They know you're running right now. He's the only sponsor running for clerk on BrianHornback.com. So that's good. But I'll give you the last word. Folks, remember, it's April 15th through the 30th is early voting. Election day is May the 5th. And like I've said on all the other ones, be sure you vote. If you don't vote in early vote and you go on May the 5th, be sure that you go vote before you go celebrate Cinco de Mayo, because Chris Davis and the Election Commission have given you these little sheets that look like coloring sheets, and you got to stay in the line. And if you go try to do Cinco de Mayo before you vote, you might have to get multiple papers because you might not be able to stay in the line. Little joke, but just be responsible when you drink, since my podcast studio is the Old Forge Distillery Podcast Studio. Anyway, I'll give you the last word. April 15th through the 30th, May 5th, Republican primary. Might be more people this year because, we got a contested sheriff's race. We got a contested mayor's race. We don't have a contested trustees race, so y'all just go ahead and vote for Justin Biggs. No contested race there. Yeah, y'all get the humor. And so I'll let you finish up and talk about why, and ask everybody to vote for you for county clerk.
Yeah, well, and I would appreciate everybody's support this election. We've been out there working hard, knocking on doors. We've been getting a really good response. We've been talking about doing three things, and it's better service, eliminating waste, and increasing transparency. You can go on my website, johnjduncan.com, and I've outlined those three things. And I know, from my previous experience with the county, I've made mistakes in the past. There are mistakes that I've learned from. I've spent most of my career in the business world, which I think separates me from my opponents in this race. I want to bring that private sector mentality to county government, and business-like ideas, and a mindset that protects every tax dollar. And if anybody has any questions, probably by the time this goes online on that website, johnjduncan.com, I'm going to have the most detailed account to date of everything that went on back in the trustee's office during my time there, as well as looking ahead and looking forward to what we hope to do in the clerk's office. But I've had a good time getting to know people and making the rounds here lately in this campaign, and I would look forward to meeting you all in person, and I hope to earn your support, and I'd appreciate it. And I've also in a lot of my speeches, I've said, while your vote is important, what's more important is I'd also appreciate your prayers, and not just for me, but for the other candidates and people involved as well, because I do believe praying for our community is important. And I'll just close with that, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Great to have you.